until my handle whittles its remnants aside the coffee grinds. Thank you.
Okay, so I have to read from this because my mom doesn't have a working printer in her house. I'm going to attempt. Oh, that works. Kind of, maybe. Not really. There we go. And make sure G is not clear, so I'm not taking his spot. Okay. This is a short story that was part of my thesis. It's part of a linked series of stories.
Tell us about you.
And
I'm serious.
It's called Change of Life. Oh wait, I might want to go to page 1.
She's cheating.
Okay. George Weaver feels ancient. Each day he goes to JF Kennedy Junior High School and swims in a sea of youth. Young girls wear tight jeans and barely there shirts, and the boys wander around with long, dirty hair and designer sneakers. Even the newest hires, like the one sitting across from him, listing the reasons why she should be the next 9th grade math teacher, are years from gray hair, pot bellies, and wrinkles. George is a buffalo nickel in a building full of brand new pennies. He doesn't remember just when it was that his hair turned from a soft chestnut brown to an unruly white, or when exactly his stomach started to obstruct the view of his feet, but it has happened nonetheless. George has noticed that his wife Miriam is old too. When they met, she had a mess of silky red curls cascading down her back, with the slightest flash of freckles across her nose. Her eyes were a vibrant brown that made up for invisible orange-red lashes, and she wore only sheer gloss over her perfectly round lips. George had jokingly offered to have her genealogy chart done once, find her ancestry, convinced she could not belong to the Peraltas. Not really. How could she have emerged from such a household full of beautiful olive-skinned, dark-haired Amazons unscathed, with any semblance of self-esteem eluded George? Just yesterday, when George woke before Miriam, he noticed that her lips have somehow collapsed into a maze of deep lines, hints of last night's 2 red lipsticks still trapped in some of the wrinkles, and her hair was now an artificial auburn, Clairol number 22 cinnaberry to be exact, a color too bright for her newly sallow skin. There is not even a hint of the young woman he had courted on the Brown University campus all those years ago. Now there was just this aging workaholic who barely has time to wipe her lipstick off before going to bed. George met Miriam as she was leaving campus from her job in the cafeteria. He was surrounded by beautiful poets all the time, but Miriam stood out with her bright red hair and her soft brown eyes. George knew at that moment that he had to meet her, take her out to dinner, and kiss her lips. What he hadn't expected was that Miriam knew very little English, or that he'd end up falling madly in love with her. Now he finds himself wondering if he had ever really been in love at all. As a reminder of Miriam's faded beauty, in front of him sits the perfect specimen of human female, Alexis Murray, 25-year-old teacher's assistant from Connecticut, seeking to replace old Mrs. Harris, who suffered a heart attack last month. Another reminder of the age around him. Miss Murray is going on and on about her experience at the Butler School in Mystic, her collegiate achievements, her athletic prowess for the also vacant soccer coach position, and how much she enjoys teaching math to young minds. George, only partly hearing what she is saying, and is instead fixated on her blouse, a pale orange satin one with pearly white buttons, one of which is undone. Underneath, he can just barely sneak a peek of the animal print bra Miss Murray wore, and George could barely control himself. Alexis Murray is beautiful in every sense of the word. Her skin is flawless. There's not a blemish or a red spot or a wrinkle. She reminds him of the skin cream ad in her wife's beauty magazines, except Miss Murray is not airbrushed. Her dark eyes drew George in, sparkling with the arrogance that comes with thinking that one will be young and beautiful forever. Miss Murray has the same figure his wife had when they met, slender legs supporting a long, lean torso. And when she speaks, Her waist-length brown hair sways ever so slightly, revealing her diamond earrings, a gift from her father, George hopes, and not a lover. "Mr. Weaver, are you okay?" Miss Murray asked him. George noticed the intonation in her voice, but not her words. She was asking a question, and he had missed it. "I'm sorry, what did you ask?" He croaked, sounding very much like a grandfather who'd never be able to bed a woman like Alexis Murray. "I asked if you were all right. You look a bit pale. Let me know because I know CPR. "Oh, no, sorry. I just remembered something I have to do later. I apologize." George grabs Miss Murray's file from his desk and pretends to read it. He knows ethically what he's contemplating and fantasizing about is wrong, but he has so little to look forward to these days. He needs a teacher, and she has experience. He also needs a reason to come to work every day, and before him is a candidate for that too, even if it's just one-sided. "So everything looks great. I just have to call the Butler School, of course, and that's just a formality. I'd say you have the job." He smiles the smile he used in his fraternity days when he was trying to coax freshman girls out of their clothes and into his arms. "Thank you so much," she said, bouncing out of her chair to shake his hand. He rises to meet her and to steal another glance at her blouse. You won't regret it, thank you." Alexis practically trots to the door, hair swaying and breasts dancing, repeating "thank you" until she's out of his office, out of the outer office, and in the hall towards the visitor's parking lot. He watches her fit form all the way to her car through the picture window. The other candidate sitting in the outer office, a middle-aged man from Wisconsin, looks at George, confused. "Philip, right? Come on in." The least George could do is meet with the man and go through the motions. It was something he's become accustomed to in his old age. "Do you mind getting your own dinner tonight, hun? I have to finish those 2 dresses for the Collier wedding by tomorrow." Miriam Weaver heard the lie escape her lips, knowing that the dresses were already done and shipped to the cleaners this morning. She looked down to avoid her husband's eyes. George makes it so easy. He never stepped foot inside her studio, built with her own 2 hands in what used to be the guest house. "No, I'll just heat up the pasta from last night," he muttered. "Right, I finished that for lunch, but there's some lunch meat in that 7-grain bread you like. Make a sandwich. I think we have Doritos too." Miriam racked her head for what else she could possibly say to preempt any suspicion from George. "Or order from Cam Shanks. We haven't had Chinese in a bit." "Are you going to want something?" "No, I had leftover pasta, remember?" Miriam watches George shrug his shoulders and saunter off to the kitchen for the takeout menu. It seems like just yesterday she was on the phone with her cousin bragging about the Theta Chi brother who had courted her at work. He was statuesque and rugged and gave off a promise of everlasting passion. On the field, he was amazing. Miriam hated sports, but she was present at every home game when George played. His legs looked so powerful in his rugby shorts. It made Miriam blush to think about it even today, even though she knew beneath his cotton dockers now were pale silks covered in varicose veins and age spots. Outside, it smells like rain. The air had that murky earth scent that reminds Miriam of the cabin on Block Island they used to visit as newlyweds. Every spring they would, regardless of jobs or funds, travel to the shabby shack to snuggle in each other's arms, catch some fish, and gaze at the Montauk Lighthouse that shone from the shore at night. Miriam stood in the yard for a bit and inhaled the memory of better times and younger days when she still loved George and when their daughter was still alive. And he still looked into her eyes as if she were the only person on earth. Today she finds it hard to believe that she had left her family behind for him. I keep scrolling too fast, sorry. This was how Miriam looks at her now, with eyes that shine whenever, this is how Elizabeth looks at her now, with eyes that shine whenever Miriam enters the room, and lips that smile whenever she whispers her name. Elizabeth Reynolds had called Miriam to tailor a dress for her granddaughter's christening last April. From the moment Elizabeth walked into the studio, the air around Miriam was different. The energy was purer somehow. "This was my daughter's christening gown," she said in her soft voice. "You've done a wonderful job of preserving it," Miriam had responded, never dropping her gaze to the gown. "A little forethought on my part and a lot of wishful thinking, I guess." The conversation wasn't much, snippets of pleasantries and idle talk, but Miriam remembered every syllable of it. She remembered that Elizabeth was wearing a vintage Pucci scarf, and how badly she wanted to touch it, having never owned anything so luxurious in her life. Miriam's own daughter had been wealthy, had married well, but she and George had never really known that kind of money that could afford a Gucci scarf. Miriam noticed that Elizabeth had no age spots on her hands, only the soft wrinkles of a 62-year-old woman. The two had become fast friends. Miriam met Elizabeth for coffee regularly throughout the week, and they talked about everything from husbands to dressmaking to photography, which is how Elizabeth earns a living. I love to capture moments when no one else is looking. You can really get someone's true essence that way, she had revealed to Miriam on the night of their first kiss. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Woo!
Woo! For us, Gia didn't show up. Okay, so that's it for us tonight. I want to thank you all so much for coming out. I'm not sure of the date and location of our next and final reading for the season. We're going to break for the summer, July and August, but we'll have one more in June. If you want to give us your name and email, I'll put you on the mailing list, and hopefully by next month we will launch our website. So thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to Bluestockings for having us. Thank you, Priya, thank you, Tiffany, thank you, Jose, and thank you to our audience. Good night.
Good night.